It is sometimes unfortunate that we have to wait until difficult times come to our society to be able to look and to look for God and to look for His help. But what about our ordinary life? Now, today let me propose to you that I kind of change the point of view of the gospel. Because in this gospel, the Lord tells us about His heart, how heaven feels, how He feels when a sinner repents and comes back. You know, sometimes we are very focused in our society about what happens to me. What about me? What about my rights? But let me ask you and ask myself, are we also aware of the rights of God? Are we also aware of His love? How the Lord feels? Today, this gospel is explaining to us the great joy there is in heaven for one sinner that repents. So let us be aware that sometimes we should get out of our little cave, look at the Lord and ask Him, Lord, how do you feel? What do you think about these problems? What do you think about life? Let me illustrate this with an example that happened to me not long ago when I was still in Spain and I visited the shrine of San Sebastian. It's the Monte Urgul, where there's a big image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And in that shrine there is a museum. So I visited the museum and there was this sister who was in charge of the museum, and there was a very beautiful image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And she told me the story of that image. That image had just been brought into the museum not long ago. And she said, you know, Father, this beautiful image was in charge by the City Hall authorities during the Spanish Civil War. And they made a promise that if the Sacred Heart of Jesus would protect the city, they would have this beautiful image made. So it happened. The city was preserved of bombing, and the City Hall in charge an artist so that he could make this beautiful image of the Sacred Heart. And it had been in the City Hall for about 60 years, 70 years after the war. But just a month before I visited the shrine, the authorities of the City Hall of San Sebastian called an on and said, Sister, we have a problem. We have this image of the Sacred Heart, but we don't have a place for it. Or we could say, we don't have a place for Him. So the sister, as a good sister, didn't get discouraged at all and said, well, why don't you look around? You might find a place for Him. There must be a corner. So they called her back about a week later and said, Sister, we've looked around and we were trying to find if there was a place, but you know, it's not only that we don't have a place for Him, but the problem is that He bothers us. So the sister, being a good sister, never getting discouraged, she said, you know what? Okay, but why don't you look around and ask if there would be a family that would be happy to have the image and bring the image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus home. So they said, sure, we'll do that. So they called her after another week and said, Sister, it is not only that we don't have a place for Him, it is not only the fact that He bothers us, but we've looked around and nobody wants Him. Nobody likes Him. So finally the image was brought into the museum. So this kind of illustrates, my dear brothers and sisters, the situation of our secularized world. We don't have a place for God. The presence of God bothers us. And there's even some people that don't like Him when He tells us what to do through the church. But the good news is that we can give consolation to the heart of Christ. We can have a room for him. He doesn't bother us. And we certainly love him and like him. Even though the world wouldn't in general, there will be great rejoicing in heaven if we offer this place in our homes, in our hearts, in our society, in our parishes, in these very offices of the ACC. Let us today tell the Lord, Lord, even though nobody likes you or would like you, we want to have a place for you. You don't bother us at all, and we love you deeply. And there will be great joy in the heart of the Lord if he finds lovers and faithful